Garden is a production of the University of Minnesota Morris in cooperation with Pioneer Public Television. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org.
Our family loves the county fair. It has been a part of our lives for over 50 years and 3 generations as we have exhibited in 4-H, FFA, homemakers, and open class. It may be extra work, but exhibiting at the fair is lots of fun too. I'm Mary Holm, and today Prairie Yard and Garden is visiting the flower and produce exhibits at the county fair. Exhibiting at the fair can be lots of fun, and I would encourage everyone to try it. For those of you who might say, I don't know how, well, you've come to the right place. Today we are going to visit with Judge Jeff Walker. He is going to give us lots of great information on how to prepare blue ribbon exhibits for the fair. Welcome, Jeff, and here comes the judge.
Thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I hope to teach some things about exhibiting.
How did you get started judging at the fair?
Well, I started out with extension, and so then I was invited to judge at the area fairs, and so 37 years ago I started judging 4-H, and that's expanded into open class too.
So about how many fairs and achievement days do you judge each year?
It can vary from year to year, but from 8 to about a dozen a year is plenty to do.
Now, is there a difference in judging for 4-H as compared to homemakers and open class? And so is there a difference at all between the different kinds?
There is, Mary. The 4-H is conference judged, so we get to sit with the 4-H member and we discuss the project. We talk about what they've learned, so it's more than just about the project. It's about what the child or the 4-H member has learned. And so that weighs in on the placing, where in open class, homemakers, we judge just the exhibit, and so it's 100% on the exhibit.
Okay, so you do interviewing with the 4-H
Yes.
children too. So do you have a preference, or do you have one that you like better than the other?
I always enjoy visiting with the 4-Hers. They're excited about their projects and the things that they've learned, and want to learn what they can do better next year.
How will people know what they can enter in, say for example, an open class? How will they know what they can prepare or what they can bring to the fair?
The premium list that each of the county ag societies or the fairs publish is really your guideline to everything that you can bring to the fair. And you want to follow that because we as a judge follow those guidelines that are spelled out in that premium list.
Okay, so if you look at the premium list, it will tell you, for example, to bring 6 beans, 6 green beans, and so you would know how many to pick.
Yes, and it can vary from fair to fair as we go around some of the area fairs, and people do go from fair to fair with their exhibits. You have to pay attention because some might have 6 beans, some might need 12.
So how should a person prepare the vegetables if you pick them out of the garden, and sometimes it'll say not to wash them? How do you clean them up?
Well, sometimes it might be just a soft cloth or just dipping the vegetable or the fruit in a little bit of water just to clean it up so it still has that brightness without being dirty.
Okay.
Judges don't like dirty.
Okay. And I would guess, too, that oftentimes the premium books will kind of spell out if they say do not wash or...
Yep.
Okay.
The superintendents are doing a great job of listing some of the tips, so people have a lot of resources that they can use from just the premium book as far as how to prepare and what to bring to the fair.
And what kind of container should people use if they bring, say for an example, bring apples to the fair to exhibit? What kind of a container should they put them into or onto?
Well, usually you don't want a container that would be distracting, but most fairs will provide the paper plate or the dish or the flower vases that the exhibit would go into.
So there again, maybe just check with the superintendent
Sure.
and find out, or do you prefer people to use more of a plain plate, or do you like it to be decorative?
And usually with any of the fruits, vegetables, the plate really is, insignificant. We're just looking at that exhibit. And so that's what we'll look at. As you get into flower arranging or some of the other flowers, then that can pay a little bit of into the placing of the exhibit.
When you are actually doing judging, what are things that you're looking for? Let's start with the vegetables.
Okay.
What are the things that you're kind of looking for?
One of the first things that we look for is uniformity. How much do they look the same? Is it the same quality? Is it the same condition? We also look at quality. So we're looking at, is it a right size to eat? Is it too far gone? Are they too large? So uniformity, quality are huge. And then just presentation, how did they trim the vegetables are kind of the three main things that I look for.
Do you ever look at things that are for insect damage, or, and I would guess that would be pretty important on fruits and vegetables?
Yeah, and cabbages seem to be the biggest culprit for insect damage, but that always plays into condition and quality. You know, if it's insect damage, that would be a quality issue.
Are you saying that size isn't always the number one criteria?
That's right, because we're also looking at uniformity, so they got to be the same size. Quality needs to be the best condition that you can eat. So let's say you have kohlrabis. They can be large and they can still be tender, but generally the medium-sized vegetables would be better quality.
You know, I was wondering about that because I was looking at some red beet exhibits.
Okay.
And the biggest ones were not the blue ribbon ones. And so does that go back to you want the good quality ones?
Yes, that would play into it because they can get woodier as they get larger. Sometimes they're rougher, look more coarse. So generally that medium-sized one, again, is a better quality and usually easier to find a better uniformity.
And I would bet you that peas and beans and like the kohlrabi and radishes are probably like that too, because they can get awfully woody too.
Yep. And this year with the warmer weather and really great growing conditions, green beans have been too big too quick. So even though you plan to plant so it's kind of ready at fair time, you don't want those beans showing in those bean pods because that's a quality thing. Again, you want the nice, smooth, straight pods.
How about for flowers? What are general things that you look for when you're judging flower exhibits?
Again, if it's a collection of flowers, uniformity, do the blooms the same? Are they the same size? Are the centers the same? Sometimes you'll be looking so hard at the size, but is the centers the same? Or the depth of petals on a zinnia, are they the same? That all plays into the uniformity part of it. And then again, condition. Are some of the petals browning? Are some of them a little bit insect damaged or heat worn, heat stressed, like we might be having today? So those are some of the things that play into the flowers.
When you say looking at the centers, is that kind of where the pollen is at? Is that what you mean by the centers?
Yes, that's correct, because marigolds, you don't often think of the center of a marigold, but as a marigold opens, that center is tight and green generally, and so that's something that I'll look at is how those centers are. If there's one's wide open and the other two are nice tight green, then that's not as uniform. Some of the other flowers, again, there's more true flowers blooming in the center, and so that can show a sign of age or condition. So we'll look at that. And an important thing about flowers is knowing how to condition your flowers, where you might pick them in the evening before and put them in warm water in a cool spot so that they will take up a lot of moisture and will be in good condition for the fair. If you just cut them the morning of the fair, they might just wilt down and not be in very good condition very quickly. And then there's other flowers like dahlias and anything with a milky sap, and they need to be usually flamed or with a candle or a match to seal because they won't take up water.
Let's talk about some specific fruits and vegetables. And we have some beautiful, beautiful exhibits here of apples. Tell us what are some good ones and what is the nicest exhibit here?
Okay, Mary, we're looking at some of the apples here. We got a variety of varieties, and so that's why there's a number of different first places here. Some of the first things that you look at is the right numbers, and you can see that the exhibitors here have exhibited all 3 apples, which was required in the premium list. One of the first things I may look for are the ripeness of the apples, and oftentimes when you look at the apple, it's the undercolor that you look for. So the red can be on the apple a long time, but the undercolor, as you can see in this apple, is starting to yellow, is a sign of ripeness. And so generally the ripe ones will place better than the green ones if you're in the same class. Also, you can see in this class that the ones with the stems on place better than the ones without. And so you want to leave the stems on the apples. You also don't want to wipe the apples, and you'll see you can see there's a waxy bloom, a little bit of a cloudiness. That's what we call the waxy bloom, and you like to see that. You don't need it polished or shined. And so that's also a very nice showmanship, that they didn't need to wipe it or scrub that apple. Some of the apples will have some insect damage like that, and generally that would count down on the apple. You want to have ones that are free of damage. Sometimes birds will also damage apples, so you don't want to have any of those. On some of the apple varieties, there is a natural russeting, and we don't count down for that. You get into the Haralson varieties, and some of those have the natural russeting, and so that's what we like to see, helps to identify what variety they are.
Now, what do you mean by russeting?
That would be the little bit of corkiness around the top of the apple, and that's very common with like a Haralson apple.
Okay.
And so oftentimes people may not know what variety is, and that's some of the ways the judges can tell what variety they are. Again, size can indicate the variety. This is a very large apple. You can see it placed well at the fair, very free of insect damage or anything else, but you notice the stems were removed. So that would have counted down a little bit as you looked for a champion apple. You can see one here that also was a second place. Again, insect damage, generally nice size. They have good uniformity. And you'll see on this variety there's a dark green center, and that helps to identify that variety too.
Why do you like to have the stems left on?
It can, again, is a quality thing. If the stem is broke off, that apple could start losing moisture, and so it would get rubbery or spoil much quicker than if you left the stem on.
Oh, that's good to know.
You also want to be careful when you're picking your apple not to include the fruit bud, because this stem was the fruit bud for next year, and so there's not going to be an apple on that stem next year because you picked the whole stem. And so you just want to naturally twist the apple off so you just have the natural stem and not the whole fruit bud.
Let's move down to probably the most popular vegetable in the whole garden, and that's tomatoes. And please tell me how you judge tomatoes, especially when there's so many different kinds.
There's so many varieties, and fortunately we divide them by kind. So we have like the paste type tomatoes, and you'll see that's here, but there's a lot of variability in even the paste tomatoes in size, shape, and with so many different varieties. You'll notice on the varieties of tomatoes, all the stems are removed. And so that's something you always do with tomatoes. I always like to tell the 4-H members that they should always remove the stems on tomatoes, because you know how stiff they are. And when you put together a basket of tomatoes, they'll poke holes in these nice, soft, ripe tomatoes. So oftentimes the things that we do for tips in exhibiting are same things you might do if you're going to a market garden or take some vegetables to a friend. You just want it to be preserved as best you can until they get to use it. So the tomatoes, again, you remove the stems. Ripe ones always place better than green ones, but we usually never count down in a 4-H, especially 4-H, with the green tomatoes. We encourage them to bring them, and especially with earlier fairs, you don't have ripe tomatoes. So fortunately today we have a lot of nice ripe ones.
So when you talk about a paste tomato, is that something like a aroma that is very fleshy and that you might use to make tomato sauce or tomato paste?
Yes, that's correct, Mary. They usually will last a long time on the vine. Like you said, they're meaty, less juicy, and very nice for the sauces and pastes and spaghetti sauce, and even great for salsa that everybody likes to make.
The cherry tomatoes, they're just like candy.
Or cherry or grape tomato. This one is the grape tomato. Again, very nice specimen, and they did remove the stems, and look how even the color is. A very, very nice exhibit, and you see it got the blue ribbon there.
So why did you call that a grape tomato rather than a cherry tomato?
It's a separate variety of tomatoes, and you'll see it's the grape shape versus the little round cherries.
Okay.
Very popular today and easy to grow.
And then looks like we have some that are maybe even yellow.
Yeah, very popular. Some of the yellow varieties that have just been released are very popular and great flavor too. Again, we remove the stems on it, and look how easy it is to get nice uniform specimens. Nice bright yellow, free of any insect disease, anything like that.
Those are, I would bet that these, along with the red, would be just beautiful in a salad.
Oh, they would. They would. There's all kinds of great recipes online now for using the tomatoes.
Here's some large yellow tomatoes, and looks like some really, really nice samples here, too.
Very nice, Mary. And you'll see this was an example of the yellow ones. I always like to look at the bottom, too, and you see how uniform they are. You see that this was the first place, even though they weren't quite perfect. That was the best exhibit we had in the yellow tomatoes today. And so, again, you look at the uniformity, but that is still a very nice group of tomatoes, even though they weren't quite perfect.
So why do you look at the bottom?
For damage, sometimes I think they'll show even better in an exhibit than sometimes the tops can be a little bit cracked or split. Some varieties are will do a lot more of that than others.
In my garden, every once in a while, I'll have a problem called blossom end rot, and so I would guess that would show up definitely
that
too.
Would definitely show up, and it seems like we're having a lot of that, and this might be an example of some of the blossom end rot. It's a physiological thing that happens with some of the early fruits, it seems, and a little bit of a spoilage, and oftentimes inside it's spoiled. So when you see your first tomato and you pick it up and it's got that on the bottom, not much you can do. You wait for the next ones, and they usually improve. So a little bit of blossom end rot there.
And I see we've even got some yellow pear tomatoes.
Very popular, kind of an heirloom tomato. Again, great for salads, and they did a very nice job of exhibiting those. Again, easy to get 6 uniform fruits.
Now here's one that really looks different here. What is this?
This is one of the heirloom tomatoes called Stripey. And part of the fun with a lot of the heirlooms is some of the colors. You can get black and pink and yellow and all kinds of odd sizes, but that's Stripey, and it has some very unique flavors in those tomatoes, so kind of fun extra thing you can do in the garden.
I've heard that the heirloom tomatoes have just a wonderful flavor, so that's a good reason to grow them then, I take it.
It's a good reason. Sometimes they have a little less disease resistance, so you have to pay attention to spacing, so maybe they have better air circulation, but definitely worth a try.
We had some wonderful tomato samples, but let's move farther down and look at some of the root crops.
All right, Mary, we have the onions here, and there's a good example of how the onions that were the largest ones didn't necessarily place, probably because of uniformity and maybe just because they're not prepped correctly. But here we have the first place onions, and you'll see how nice and uniform that they are, and they've been properly cleaned. Any of the broken scales were removed, and just a very nice sample of onions, and they're dried onions, and that's what we like to see at the fair, is the nice dried onions.
So what do you mean by dried onions?
You'll see the top, Mary. If they're going to keep, the onions will kink at the neck and dry down, and then they'll keep very well. If you get a thick-necked onion, which possibly could have been like these, they don't dry as well, and then they won't keep. And so just again, for quality purposes for exhibiting onions, you want that nice dry neck on those onions. You'll also notice in the onions how these are ready for the chopper and not ready for exhibiting. They've peeled them too much. And so that's why they didn't place in today's fair, because they were peeled too much. A common fault, and it's very easy with white onions because they only have one layer of skin to peel them too much. So you got to be really careful when you're prepping those for exhibit.
So then what do you do with the roots on them?
The roots generally could be trimmed. They're nice and dry with the dried onion. You can trim them to like 1/4 of an inch, and that just makes them look a little neater, a little cleaner in the exhibit.
And I see that we have several different varieties here too. We've obviously got some white and some yellow, and here we've got some red onions too.
Yeah, generally they're broken down by color. Generally the onions that we grow here are from sets, so they're the flat type, but generally they're exhibited by color, and so you can see how they have done that with each color.
Well, and I've got some beets here too, and actually the smaller beets are the blue ribbon ones rather than the larger ones.
And again, Mary, you'll see how the uniformity and quality here. These beets are going to be nice and tender. They're uniform in size. They maybe trim the tops just a little bit. They're a little showier with about 1.5 inches of top. But again, very good quality, nice uniformity on it compared to the other beets that you can see are a little bit rougher and not as uniform in shape. A lot of times beets will be many different shapes, and so again, the uniformity is what we look for, and you have 2 different shapes there, which cut it, into the placing of that beet.
We'll talk a little bit about herbs too. I mean, how do you judge herbs? Now, this is dill here in front of us, but how do you judge dill?
With the herbs, generally, again, you look at quality. Is it the stage that we'll usually use, let's say, for our pickles, or for generally with dill, it's for the pickles. Again, that quality, we also look at how uniform. Oftentimes, they are supposed to show like 3 heads, and so you'll look at the uniformity of each one of those heads in the dill. We also look to make sure there isn't aphids. Dill tend to take a lot of aphids, and so we look for insects on the dill. Again, quality.
If you get any aphids, what do you do to get them off of there?
You just wash them off with some water.
Okay.
Would probably be all you do before the fair.
And I see that this head is pretty mature. I mean, this would be wonderful to put into my pickles.
It would. It would. It's a very nice example, and at a good stage you can use.
I see some nice samples of cucumbers here too. Is there any certain tip that you have related to cucumbers?
A couple things on the cucumbers. You always want to leave the stems on. You'll notice we have some cucumbers here that are already quite rubbery. And you see that the end got broken off, and so they're losing moisture very rapidly, and the condition is going out. You can also see that they've scrubbed them because the spines are gone, and again, they're losing moisture through those pores. So one way to identify some of the varieties is by the spines. You see this is a black spined cucumber, and so then that has not been scrubbed or washed, and so you do not want to wash or scrub cucumbers unless they're really dirty.
Really?
So leave the stems on, leave the spines on, and bring them to the fair.
This has been great. I've learned so much about exhibiting vegetables, but let's move over to the flowers.
All right, Mary.
I have a question. Recently I've heard a lot about buffalo grass. Can I grow this in my lawn?
Well, buffalo grass is one of our native grasses, but it has a distinct disadvantage in that it isn't the bright green color that we're used to seeing. At best conditions, buffalo grass is kind of a blue-gray color, and it might even be a dormant color like what we see here. Only in the heat of the summer will it have its best color. The biggest advantage with buffalo grass is it's short. Even though we have mowed the plots that are here, some of this has jumped out here, and at full height it's only about 4 or 6 inches. So it is a really slow-growing, short plant, native especially in dry sites or even clay soil conditions, but its coloration is usually not what most people want for their lawn. It'll go dormant as soon as it's cold in the fall. It takes a long time to green up in the summer. You will never have to water buffalo grass, but it's not going to be that bright green color.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chanhassen, dedicated to enriching lives through the appreciation and knowledge of plants.
We got a couple of good examples here of our flowers where I talked about the centers of the flowers. You'll see how this flower here has a little bit of a tight green center. And
Right
then
there.
as you rotate this way, it's a little more open. You don't see the green. And then when you rotate here, this flower is older. See, notice less bright and a little weather-worn on the edge. So that played into the uniformity, and then it was 3rd place. And here was the 1st place marigold. And look at the condition of the centers and the brightness of all the flowers, and all about the same size.
Ah, so the very nice uniformity, that's what you're looking for.
Size and the center of the flower. I also talked about a little bit about the depth of the flowers, and you'll notice the zinnias were a great example of how that one is a deeper flower and the other ones are a little bit more shallow. Although they're the same diameter, that would play into the uniformity also in the judging of those zinnias.
What do you mean by deeper?
You see the number of rows of petals in that flower?
Oh, you mean like going down
Yes.
like that? Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Versus that skinnier flowers like that.
Oh, gotcha
So that
now.
all pays into that. That one didn't place. You notice this one did. Much more uniform, a little bit more uniformity in the depth also. All right, hosta leaves are really popular at a lot of our fairs. What I'm running into in a lot of them, and this one did not place, you'll notice some insect damage, some spots. Sometimes there are a little bit of shiny spots where the insects are feeding. And so that plays into the placing of those hostas. So you want a nice, bright, clean leaf like this. This one was a first place. Look at the bright there. No insect, no damage. Very nice specimen. And that rated it a blue ribbon.
Why does this one just have one leaf and that one has 3 leaves?
We generally will exhibit by size, so oftentimes maybe 3 to 4 inch will be one single, and then under 2 or 3 inches will be 3 specimens. And so again, pay attention to your premium list of how many to bring.
Okay.
We also look at glads. You'll notice here's the first place glad, how nice and straight the stem is. You have some blooms that are open, some buds, and a nice straight stem. One of the faults of gladiola would be blossoms on the back side. And so you want to have them all on the front side, on one side, Mary. And again, some flowers open, and again, some buds. And this one's a little bit past prime, as well as the fault of the flowers on the back side.
I see. So most of the flowers are facing in this direction here, facing me now, but there are some that are facing on your side, and so that's a negative when it comes to gladiola bulbs.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
All on one side.
And I know that you are definitely right when you say that hostas are such a popular plant, and this is a beautiful sample. So if people want information on how to exhibit at the fair, where can they find ideas or guidelines?
Well, the best thing, Mary, would be to pick up the premium list for the county fair that they're going to exhibit in. It tells you quantities, how to prepare the exhibits, and when to show up with your exhibit. Sometimes that's important because oftentimes it's the day before a fair would start. So all that information is in your premium list, so you want to pay attention to that. Great resource.
I think people can also get information from their extension office. Is that correct?
That's correct. They have some of the information there that some of the 4-H members would use, and it's the same for open class as it is for 4-H. It's pretty standard, so pick up some of the information there at the extension office.
And that'll tell you how to prepare your vegetables and your flowers for exhibiting at the fair also.
Yes, that's correct.
And you know, another great resource will be watching this show, and if people want to watch it again just before their fairs, they can go to pioneer.org and watch the show right in their homes on their computers too.
That'll be convenient and timely then, just before their fair. So.
Well, you have been a wonderful resource and a wonderful judge. Thank you so much for all the good information you gave us today.
Well, thank you, Mary. It's been fun.
Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yekel Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org.